Hello, friends. So this is the fourth video lecture on Chapter 2, which is Child Growth and Development, and this is the conception chapter. Well, the last video ended here on the topic of prenatal development, and I had just finished discussing the different stages where we move from the zygote to the embryo to the fetus, and now I want to talk a little bit about some of the complications or some of the complications that come with pregnancies. This slide is a list of what we call teratogens, I believe is the proper pronunciation. That's how I have always said it, which is a term given to environmental factors that can contribute to birth defects. And basically, there are lots of different categories of teratogens. Some are physical, some refer to the way the mother's body metabolizes infections, diseases, drugs, chemicals, but the degree to which a teratogen can affect the unborn depend really on this list right here. And that has to do with, so in the previous video lectures, I was talking about how different stages are. So for instance, the first stage is up to 14 days. A mother may not even know she's pregnant. And as we move through the different stages of development and certain aspects of the body are being developed, that if the unborn is exposed to a teratogen, right? So the point that I'm getting at here is the timing of the exposure can influence the kind of damage that the teratogen can do. So particularly in the very, very early stages, that an environmental pollutant, an environmental factor can have significant effects. The later on in development, when like the lungs and things are developed, I'm getting off track. The amount of exposure, how much a mother is exposed to, the number of teratogens, the genetic vulnerability, as we talked about last chapter when we were talking about epigenetics, the relationship between genes and the environment. If a mother is more genetically susceptible to the whatever to becoming ill from the teratogen, then that will also influence the development. And then, of course, the sex of the fetus. As we talked about earlier in this chapter with the X and the Y being smaller, carrying less information, males are more likely to experience the ill effects of the teratogens. Now, what are these? There's several pages in your textbook. I hope you're looking at your textbook that talk about the different categories. A couple here worth pointing out when we talk about physical teratogens. One of them actually in the earliest stages are hot tubs and saunas. And what happens is if you raise the mother's body up to above 105 degrees, this can be very destructive for prenatal development. Metabolic conditions. Is a mother metabolizing? Is she well nourished? Right? A poorly nourished mother will not be very successful at producing a healthy offspring. Infections, syphilis, HIV. HIV is certainly one. Herpes. Of course, you can throw in COVID here, Zika virus, all of these things. Zika virus is one that is interesting because it affects brain development, the neurological tube. And you remember this is one of the first things to evolve. So if a mother is exposed to Zika in her early stages, the earlier in her pregnancy she's exposed to Zika, the more deadly it is because it specifically affects the brain development. The later on in development, after the brain is developed, the less damaging Zika is. Drugs and chemicals. This is legal drugs, prescription drugs, chemicals in the environment such as lead, toxins, such environmental toxins such as the stuff you get in the kitty litter box. That's what falls under all of these categories. So there's lots of variables at play. So this slide is a short list of all of the maternal and paternal factors that influence successful prenatal development. the age of a mother. So the same thing, so there's a similar parallel between the age of the mother and the age of the father. And the idea is that the cells that will become sperm and will become eggs, the older that they are, yeah, the older that they are, the more likely they are to experience chromosomal damage. And the same thing for being too young. A mother who's under the age of 15 has not fully developed her own body, so I think this should be obvious. So obviously, it would be difficult for her to produce another person. Gestational diabetes is a kind of diabetes that happens only when a woman is pregnant. This has to do with the ability to process and use glucose in the blood. And a woman who is diabetic during pregnancy, I want to make sure I got my notes here, can result in preeclampsia, which includes high blood pressure. This can her child could be very large, making it difficult to deliver, or the child can also develop diabetes. So there's lots of things to look for. This gets diagnosed, I believe, around the early 20s. Hypertension, this is when there's too much pressure on the blood vessels, right? Or high blood pressure, otherwise known as hypertension. This can result in so preeclampsia is when a woman suffers from high blood pressure during her pregnancy, can cause the child to be born. Yeah, can cause the child to be born with high blood pressure as well. If you watch Downton Abbey, this is what the young woman died of, and when she died of eclampsia. So this is actually pre-eclampsia. Rh disease is an interesting phenomenon. So Rh refers to a protein in the blood, and people are either Rh positive or Rh negative. The challenge with this one is the risk is that if the mother is Rh negative and her baby is Rh positive because they get that from their father, then the mother's body and the blood happens to cross, which would be something that could potentially happen. The mother's immune system might begin to attack the blood of baby. So it's important that we manage Rh factor. Weight gain, obviously, it says something to the effect of that a woman should really only have about 300 extra calories a day. There's a chart in your book about what's considered ideal weight gain for a normal weight. A normal weight mother is about 25 to 35 pounds. Weight gain can cause all kinds of, what else does it say about weight gain? Yes, you don't want too big of a baby. Both stress and depression, so these should kind of make sense as well. Both stress and depression result in potentially a person would not take care of themselves in healthy ways. They might seek ways to self-medicate, including drugs and alcohol, or just not taking care of themselves, just not eating. But I think something that's also worth pointing out is that both stress and depression can result or trigger stress hormones, and that can flood the mother's brain, but also the unborn's brain. So both of these things are potentially damaging for emotional and brain development of the child. Our brain, so cortisol is a stress hormone, and when we flood our brains with stress hormones, so there's a lot of really interesting research about the role of trauma in utero. If the mother experiences trauma, whatever the mother is experiencing in her head, the baby is also exposed to. So if a mother lives in a very stressful, scary kind of environment, she is flooding that child's brain with the same sort of stress hormones, and the kid is learning, their kid's brain is being conditioned to be prepared for this very dangerous environment. I hope that makes some sense, but the point is that what the mother is experiencing is really in the world, or how she's interpreting the world, is how the unborn's brain is coming to understand that the world is like. So if a mother is scared, the baby believes the world is scary. If the mother has learned or is able to manage her own emotions, the baby is experiencing those positive emotional states too. That's the point that I want to make. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and the next video lecture will be the last one where I talk about some more complications and prenatal assessments.